You needed one to get us on here.
Beat a gavel.
Okay.
Call into session the October 21st, 2019 meeting of the Rolla City Council. Is there anyone here tonight from the Ministerial Alliance? Hi, good evening.
And Dan Phillips. Let's pray. Heavenly Father, we thank you for your love and grace for all that you've done. We thank you for the beautiful weather we've enjoyed. We thank you for the rain, Lord, that has blessed our parched ground. We pray that you'd bless these people tonight who have so sacrificially giving of their time, their energies, their skills to be a blessing to this community. We appreciate them so. We pray, Lord, today for the Williams family with this passing. What a very kind man and a servant. We pray that you just bless that family, Lord, encourage them. And we just thank you for all you've done. In Christ's name, amen.
Amen. Jacob, you want to lead us in the pledge?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
If everyone would remain standing, I'd like to have a moment of silence for Jimmy Dale Williams. Probably most of you know, but if you didn't, he served on this council for 29 years. And I think that says a lot about him, and I know we all have a lot of respect for him. So if we could just stand for a moment in memory of him. Thank you. You may be seated. We have two public hearings tonight. The first is ordinance amending section 30-16 of the code pertaining to marijuana possessions. John?
Thank you, Matthew. We've had a chance to discuss this now for a couple of meetings, and this is again the modifications to section 30-16 of the Rolla City Code as it pertains to marijuana and our current laws regarding possession. As a result of the medical marijuana action, we wanted to modify our ordinance so that at least we recognize that there is an exception to the possession ordinance for small quantities and, of course, the drug paraphernalia associated with the medical marijuana. There is before you an ordinance that shows some yellow highlighted changes, and if Matthew, if you or Carolyn want to comment on those.
You want me to?
If you don't mind.
Sure.
If you can keep your voice up.
I'll try. So in the packet you received, the extra copy with the yellow are the changes from what was in the packet. It was more just for clarification. I would say the highlights would be that we needed to specifically add drug paraphernalia in so that we could then accept it if you had the license. So we wanted to make sure it wasn't all excluded if you didn't have a properly issued license. The bottom part who talks about the card using the paraphernalia, it's not just if it's commonly used for consumption and or manufacturing, but it's when used for that purpose. So it kind of, again, directs it back to if you have a lawful license and that's what you're using the paraphernalia for, because you could have paraphernalia that you use for marijuana, but could also be used for other things, and you don't want to then exclude it. Does that make sense? On the second page, the red area is the area that deals with the 10 or less grams of marijuana, and it just gives the options in lieu of an arrest. One, it would be the person would be issued a citation, and that's as long as they have no other priors as well, and would not be required to appear in court if they're paying a fine. So obviously, if they want to plead not guilty or something, they're still going to probably have to appear. And the third option would be not fine more than $100. Now, for clarification, The state statute allows a D misdemeanor to be fined up to $500. I don't know that there was any discussion or decision as to what the fine amount should be. I think that was proposed perhaps by some discussion. Maybe John can clarify if that was the mayor and or the chief. I don't know if there's any explanation there, but I think it's important that you all realize that the fine could be up to $500, but you can cap it at whatever you choose to do on that 10 or less. So unless you have any questions, those would be the major changes from what was already in your packet that I would propose after the public hearing, when you hear what else the group has to discuss, you know, if you have any other amendments to that, if that makes sense. Does anybody have any questions about those changes that I made? Okay.
Before we move forward with the amendment, on the consideration of the amendment, the mayor had wanted to pass today for the purposes of a public hearing so that the community could have a chance to speak about what we're proposing here, or what's been proposed here. And so with that, is there anyone here in the audience that wishes to speak in favor of this marijuana proposition? Is there anyone that wishes to speak against? If you'll come forward and state your name and address for the record.
I'm actually probably more in favor, but you can take my comments as you will. I'm Rochelle Gurrell. I'm a family physician in our medical community, so I appreciate the opportunity to visit. It is well known that the marijuana of today is not the same as it was in the 1970s, and can have dire consequences. Formulations of today can get up to 95% THC. So as we talk about the amounts to allow someone to have on their possession means something entirely different than it previously did. I believe the state statute is reasonable, and allowing higher grams on a person's possession would be away from the state precedent and allow for a statement that marijuana does no harm. I appreciate that you, the City of Rolla council members, are bringing the ordinance to match that of the state and not reduce the consequences further. It is reasonable to allow first-time offenders with less than 10 grams on their person to avoid arrest and be given a citation. I also think it is advisable to still have further consequences such as fines and jail time available for the repeat offenders. Our law enforcement should not be protecting our law-abiding citizens with one hand tied behind our back. Allowing them to do their jobs with reasonable boundaries seems reasonable. Also, with the rumor of decriminalization or even full legalization, there needs to be further consideration to the consequences of these actions. Already calling marijuana medical, which is far from the reality, is giving the impression that marijuana is something other than an intoxicant. It cannot be forgotten that marijuana is a psychoactive drug. The consequences of its use is far-reaching through all ages of our community. I appreciate your consideration.
Thank you. Anyone else that wishes to speak either for or against this proposed ordinance? Is there any question? Oh, yes, please come forward.
Judy Ann Crenning, MD, ear, nose, and throat surgeon here in Rolla. I just want to thank you very much for the open session. I'm going to just reiterate and support what Dr. Burrell said. I have to agree that smaller amounts, we should stay within the state guidelines and not tie up our court system unless, of course, they meet that criteria. It is not a medicine. It is a psychoactive drug. We have got to let our law enforcement keep the rest of the community safe, and we need them to keep people who are using this drug safe from themselves, wrecks, the whole bit. So I'm for following the state statutes and keeping our law enforcement having an ability to pull people off the street, off the road that could do harm to themselves or others. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, sir. Come on forward.
Good evening. My name is Stuart Bauer, and I'm located at 925 Murray Lane, Rolla, Missouri. With the recent news that we see about Juul and obviously the epidemic that has spread and now killed several people across the nation, I feel that this is going to be also a stress on resources that we have currently. Very limited resources, as has been pointed out in the media with the law enforcement, first responders, and the medical community. Obviously, we just had 2 medical doctors up here who talked about it. I would stress that we not exceed any more than the minimum that the state has allowed. I would also express that there might be even further fines for repeat offenders in this case, and more caution be imposed upon those who are looking at this as a critical or as a leniency in this case of use in this venture. So I express it as a concerned citizen, also express it as a family man and a neighbor, and I hope that the city council will see it that. I do not have medical evidence of it, nor do I have personal experience of it, nor do I want anybody in my family to have any experience of it. There are alternatives to treat the quote-unquote illnesses out there. So that's where I'm resting my case here. Thank you.
Carolyn, there are enhanced punishments for repeat offenders, is there not?
Yes, the 10 or less is, this proposal, one is only with no prior history, and the reference in the state statute has to do with no prior offenses, as defined by state statute.
So if a person were caught a second time, the prosecutor would have discretion on whether or not to enhance the punishment?
That would be my interpretation.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else who wishes to speak either for or against the marijuana ordinance in this public hearing? Seeing none, that closes the public hearing. Is there a motion to amend the proposed ordinance as outlined in the supplement you would have received with the packet?
So moved.
Second. Is there any discussion from council regarding this? Can we have all in favor?
Do we need a motion to approve the ordinance?
We gotta amend
Approving the amendment.
Yeah.
Amending it.
All those in favor of the amendment, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same side. Motion passes, or the amendment passes, excuse me. Yeah, can we have final reading on the ordinance?
An ordinance amending section 30-16 of the general ordinances of the city of Rolla, Missouri, known as the Code of City of Rolla, Missouri pertaining to marijuana possession, as amended.
So move. Second.
Roll call vote?
Eberly,
Yes.
Allen,
Yes.
Schneider,
Yes.
Reuter,
Yes.
Mush,
Yes.
Jordan,
Yes.
Henry,
Yes.
Crow,
Yes.
Schott,
Yes.
Roeder,
Yes.
10 ayes.
Ordinance passes. Second item on our agenda is an ordinance vacating a portion of the 6th Street right-of-way adjacent to 607 North Main Street. Tom?
As he said, this is a request to vacate only a portion of the right-of-way of 6th Street. This is, I believe it was 8 inches of right-of-way on the north side of 6th Street adjacent to the subject property. This is a property that has a storage facility on it. And on the air photo, you'll see it's the kind of the red outline around it. What prompted this is the property is up for sale. They had the property surveyed, and when they had the property surveyed, they came to find out that the building, although it's been there for a very long time, is actually partly into the right-of-way of 6th Street. So you can see on the survey, they've got it at about 6 inches to 7 inches into the right-of-way. And there's also, and the survey also showed utilities. There are no utilities within the area requested to be vacated. It's once again just to the north side of the right-of-way, south of the property.
This is a Google Street View of the property, just to remind you what it looks like. It's just a storage building, and then there's also kind of related fences and kind of a concrete retaining wall. Just to summarize, there's no utilities in the area to be vacated. We didn't receive any objections from any utility providers. The right-of-way will still be wide enough to do what it needs to do. However, 6th Street is a collector road. Ordinarily, collectors would have that extra 8 inches of right-of-way for that status of road, but as said, in working with Public Works, we can still do what we need to do, especially since the building is already there. And this encroachment has existed for a number of years. The Planning and Zoning Commission took a look at this, and they did recommend approval of this case 7-0. Do you have any questions for me before we move to the public hearing? Let's
Yes,
go with you
Rachel.
first.
Yeah, I noticed in the discussion here, the city council also has the option to grant the application a license to allow the encroachment to remain. So does that mean more like if the building ever went down, that would revert back to the city, or?
That, in essence, that's what I'm talking about, yes.
Okay.
As you can see, the applicant has applied for a vacation, mostly as a permanent option,
Yeah.
yes.
So in the case you're discussing, it would be a permanent change of status from that land to the city land to the private owner, is that correct?
Yes.
So do you happen to know the dimensions of it? I thought I saw 60 on one side, and what's the dimension of this lot that's for sale? 60 feet, is that right?
The south, no, I don't know the dimensions.
The reason I'm
the
curious
entire
is,
property.
I know in the past, we had an incident, it was actually kind of the other way around, I think it was partly with RMU, where we had encroached on someone's land and where we had put some of our utilities. I believe in that case, we ended up working out some sort of deal to purchase that from the landowner, if I remember correctly. Does anyone else remember what we did there? But the
Was
reason.
that in the alley, or?
No, this was over, I think, behind White Columns Drive area, near the Audubon Nature Center. There was some encroachment. I think we worked something out with the landowner to, instead of moving all our utilities, do the same thing in reverse. So the city
Yeah.
made a purchase.
Sounds like you're talking about an easement.
Yes, exactly. So we purchased an easement of that property. So the only question I have here, I think certainly makes sense to make something work here so this sale can go through, et cetera. The only question I had was, I was doing a little math and trying to figure out, so if there's 60-foot frontage times 0.53 feet, we're talking about 31 square feet of this property, I guess would be 31 square feet. Does that sound right?
It sounds about right.
Okay,
I believe
so then I multiplied it, if each corner of the property was 60 feet by 60 feet, 3,600 square feet would be that property size. And I don't know what the property is for sale at, but I guess what I'm getting at is, should the city be paid something for their piece of property they're giving up? I guess that's the question.
There was certainly a bit of discussion about that. The issue is, this property actually was given to the city to begin with. The city didn't buy it. When the property was platted, they give property for streets and roads and things like that in order to facilitate the development, of course. But I think that's the issue, is the city, if the city had went and bought the property, we talked about this with MoDOT as an example. MoDOT buys the rights of ways when they build or expand roads. And so when you go back and don't need the property for some reason, they actually do sell it for an amount of money when that happens. And so, like I said, that's the big difference in this case, is the city didn't pay anything for it.
Right, but to clarify, we are giving up our ability to use it ever in the future.
That's right.
So I'm just suggesting that we might want to look at the idea that it's something that we no longer have use to that we would have in the past. I was just doing some figures and calculation, and I came up with that it would be, on a size of a 3,600 square lot, if that's 60 by 60, it would be about 0.86%, so that's about 1%. So at a selling price of $200,000, that would be 1% of 200,000. I mean, I'm just wondering if we should have a discussion of that, or if it's just, this is something that, also based on the fact that it's an error based on the previous builder, I guess, or previous owner. Does anyone else have a feeling on that, or think it makes sense just to kind of?
Well, it's a strip of concrete about as wide as your hand. So that really doesn't have much value, even if you pretend it's a square, in the way I look at it.
I mean, it's an encroachment on city property in the sense that if everybody did that everywhere in the city, we'd be losing some of our right of way, I guess. I'm not saying it was done intentionally, of course not. I mean, it was an accident, just like we had, and the city had to pay for that, I guess, in the same way that we dealt with that.
I kind of feel like, I was going to say, I kind of feel that this is somewhat different in the sense that when we encroached on that individual's property with our sidewalks and signs, that was immediately we were immediately notified by the builder or the developer. In this situation, this property's been here, I don't know how long, a very long time, at least as long as I've been in Rolla, and nobody's complained about it, and I don't know if our streets department, Darren, have we had any need for this or issues with this?
No.
So I feel, if this were a private piece of property, it would be, this owner would have adversely possessed it, but you can't adversely possess city property. So, I mean, in my mind, I think I'm fine just giving it up.
Adverse possession being the number of years?
Yes,
and
and 10 years on private property.
Okay. I'm not stuck on it. I just kind of wanted to bring it up as a talking point based on the fact that it was something that happened to the city before, and I know there was that exchange. So.
Yeah.
Just doing a little quick math on it, it looks like it'd be about 60 square feet. If you took it's about a 90-foot frontage at 8 inches. $10 a square foot would be a really high value for commercial property. But even if we use that $10 a square foot, that's $600. So I think the thought was it's a nominal amount. No, the argument can be made it's a nominal amount the other way as well to pay for it. But I think it goes back to the point from Thomas. But I think Tom's point was we didn't acquire it to begin with, the right-of-way. And so typically when you vacate easement right-of-way, the law says it sort of goes back to the adjoining property owner. But this is a little different. And then the option, of course, of doing a license agreement, which keeps in the city's possession, but ultimately, you just sort of punt it down the road, but it puts a cloud on the property as it goes to sell, and I'm sure the owners would like to have that title cleared, so.
Yeah.
And that really is the beginning of this, or the reason why they're seeking this to begin with, is the issue with the cloud on the title. The city's not asking them to tear the building down now. I mean, there's no, that's really the issue. Any other questions for me before we move to the public hearing?
No.
If there are no further questions from council, this will open the public hearing. Is there anyone within 185 feet of the proposed vacation that wishes to speak in favor? Anyone within 185 feet of the proposed vacation wishing to speak against? Anyone outside of 185 feet that wishes to speak in favor of the proposed vacation? And anyone outside of the proposed vacation that wishes to speak against? Seeing no one, that closes the public hearing. Can we have first reading?
An ordinance approving the vacation of a portion of the right-of-way of 6th Street, VAC 19-02.
We have several special presentations tonight, the first being an introduction of our new Rolla Regional Economic Commission Executive Director, Sindra.
Good evening. This evening I come to speak to you, and I've come here several times in the past. Actually, over the past almost 10 years, I've presented in front of many of you and many of your predecessors, and have spoken to you, and I've been very proud over those almost 10 years to have served as your economic developer. And been very happy to have done that, and I think that together as a team, the city of Rolla, the city of St. James, our county, we've all, with our partners, have been very successful. Had a lot of good things happen over those past 10 years, but I'm very looking forward to my retirement and even more so now because I'm happy to have been able to say that we've got a very, very, very good guy. Very, guy that I feel very confident in leaving you all in the hands of. Someone I greatly respect. Ron Reed is here. Actually, he retired, but just can't stay retired. And from Houston, Missouri, not Houston, Texas. And I'd like for him to just tell you just a little bit about himself. He will be starting here in November, and I'll be leaving at the end of the year, and then he'll take over. Just tell you a little bit about yourself.
Well, my name is Ron Reed, and I have been in economic development about 20 years or so. I've also been being close by. I've seen a lot of the great things already happening in Rolla.
Mm-hmm.
So when this opportunity was mentioned, it was the excitement of where it was and all the good things that had happened and those visible.
Mm-hmm.
Being able to work with the university and others and partners, medical community, financial community, and others. These are the things that really brought the excitement to it. So real quickly, some of the objectives that had been put in front of me, that we will try to bring as much attention to all the good things in Rolla, so to indoctrinate as many people as we can about those good things, and especially to our students from college, high school, tech schools, all the above, really to get them to start to looking more to Rolla as a place to live and grow. So some of the things we'll be working to put those things together that way. So I'll be looking forward to working with each and every one of you, and enjoy working with people very much. Enjoy working with boards very much. So we'll start in a couple of weeks, and we'll be ready to go. So, thank you.
Welcome, Mr. Reed.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Welcome.
We wish you the best, Cindy.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye now.
The next special presentation is the Rolla Downtown Business Association Boo Palooza on October 31st. Hi.
Hello. Well, I'm Lana Sowers. I've been the president of the Rolla Downtown Business Association for a decade or so, or 2 or 3, 1913. And we have had a trick-or-treat event downtown for many, many years, at least 40, when my son was even little. And the downtown businesses have always welcomed children from the whole area to come and have a safe place to trick-or-treat. Because living in a rural community, if they went next door, that's about a quarter of a mile generally, and that would take them several hours just to go to 2 places. So we decided, wouldn't it be fun to do this? And we've done it for many years, but we have a young, energetic marketing committee that wanted to really crank it up last year, and it was tremendously successful. It's called Boo Palooza, and it will be on Halloween. I love the question of when are you having Halloween? Pretty much every year. It is October 31st. I think the only time we bumped it was when it was on Sunday, and I think we bumped it to Saturday night. But October 31st is Halloween. That is actually when we're going to have it. It's from 5 to 7, and you're supposed to dress in your Halloween best and join us. We turned Pine Street into Treat Street. But more importantly, we have been convinced, and we are now closing all of Pine Street. This is from 6th Street all the way up to 12th. And the reason it's up to 12th is we are now partnering with university organizations, and we love to partner with our neighbors at Missouri S&T. And if anybody attended last year, if you could, I mean, it was thousands of folks. You will see organizations from S&T along with many other community organizations that are providing games for the kids, activities for the kids, treats for the kids. And vendor spaces are still available, so I know we're on television, so we should let people know they're still available. We already have approximately 75 vendors with candy, treats, and children's activities. There's no cost to be a vendor, but we ask that you have a children's activity, candy, or something to hand out. Mm-hmm. There's going to be a pet costume contest from 5 to 7 as well, and the Children's Library Plaza, the library courtyard. And Student Union Board is going to host a movie, Young Frankenstein, at 7:30. So after our event, you go down to the band shell, and Student Union Board from Missouri S&T is having a movie. There are going to be all kinds of photo ops. There are going to be princesses. There's Star Wars folks. I don't know where they're coming from. And we have a potty bus. I don't know if you all know this, but Nick Barrick, who owns USA Tours, has created a potty bus. I think it's a 6-hauler. I'm not sure. There is a baby changing station as well. That's going to be at 11th and Pine. And it's really high tech. I mean, they're actually individual. It's really cool. And it will actually save us from renting porta potties, which we do for many events. And as you know, we are so thrilled to have all this energy. We are so lucky. John Butts and I have talked about this many times. In former lives of mine, I have worked with statewide organizations. They went, how do you get your city council to come to the table and support you? And I don't know, you all just do it. But not only that, our police, our fire, Brady Wilson and environmental, I mean, you have to have trash control when you have all these people. But the whole point is, if we don't have a vibrant downtown, our entire community will really pay.
Yeah.
And I've always believed in this, and I've never owned a business downtown, which makes me a little crazy. But that's okay, because I think it's so critical. So we have so many events. You may have noticed through summer and through fall, it's almost every week. We took a couple of weeks off. And we would love for people to come. So, Boo Palooza, it's going to be Thursday, October 31st from 5 to 7. And thank you very much.
Thank you, Lana. It's a great event. Final one we have is the Halloween Spooktacular at the Center on October 26th. John, do you want to?
Yeah, unfortunately, Marcy came down with just not feeling well today, and so I'm going to quickly sub for her. So there's actually 2 events, and they're not on October 31st. Don't get confused with these dates. So the first one is actually the Boo Splash, and that's Friday, October 25th. That's going to be the watching the movie, I haven't seen it myself, Halloween Town. That's going to be aired in the pool, so you can come and swim at the pool, and it's 7 o'clock approximately starting time. It's no charge, complimentary to members, and a $5 for non-members to participate in that. And then the very next day, on Friday, October 26th, Saturday, October 26th, we are doing Spooktacular at the Center, which includes games, crafts, costume contest, and a light lunch, and that's $5 for a family, and that's from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. Special thanks to several sponsors who support that effort to keep that cost low, including Price Choppers, who is providing the food for the lunch. So that's $5 for the family on October 26th, from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m.
Thank you. We got 3 items of old business tonight. The first is an ordinance amending certain sections of the code regarding sidewalks. Tom?
As you said, this is for final reading, so we've already talked about this actually twice before, so I'll go through it real quick, and if I need to back up, we'll do that. Just to remind you, this is a proposed text amendment, clarifies when sidewalks are and are not needed, clarifies what width they would need to be built if they're to be built, requires sidewalks with development and redevelopment in addition to subdivision of property, allows for waivers when building a sidewalk is infeasible or not needed, provides flexibility for encroachments and widening for trails. Is having proper sidewalk management assists with pedestrian mobility. It'll help close gaps in the existing sidewalk systems. Where there are gaps, they discourage walking and can impede people with limited mobility, and development and redevelopment could help close gaps in the system and save the city money. Do I have any questions for me?
We have final reading.
So moved. Oh, sorry.
I was like, wow. An ordinance amending Chapter 42, Article 2, and Article 3 of the City of Rolla ordinances of the City of Rolla, Missouri regarding the requirements of the construction of sidewalks.
Move proposed ordinance pass.
Second.
Roll call vote.
Schneider,
Yes.
Roder,
Yes.
Reuter,
Yes.
Jordan,
Yes.
Schott,
Yes.
Crow,
Yes.
Mush,
Yes.
Allen,
Yes.
Eberly,
Yes.
Henry,
Yes.
Tenace.
Ordinance passes. The next item is an ordinance authorizing the mayor to enter into an agreement with Instituform Technologies for sanitary sewer lines rehabilitation. Darren?
So attached is a contract to rehabilitate just over 1.25 miles of sanitary sewer in various locations throughout the city. We participated in this cooperative purchase. This will be the 9th time we've done it. Had very good luck with this contractor. They did a really good job. So we're asking for a final reading of that contract, $201,134.34. Questions?
Final reading?
An ordinance authorizing the mayor of City of Rolla, Missouri to execute on behalf of the City of Rolla, Missouri, a certain agreement between the City of Rolla, Missouri and In Situ Technologies USA LLC.
Move proposed ordinance pass.
Second.
Roll call vote.
Schott,
Yes.
Mush,
Yes.
Jordan, Schneider,
Yes.
Reuter,
Yes.
Allen,
Yes.
Henry,
Yes.
Crow,
Yes.
Eberly,
Yes.
Roder,
Yes.
Tenace.
Ordinance passes. Next item on the agenda is an ordinance amending section 2789 of the code pertaining to stop intersections. Darren?
So the attached map shows where we recommend putting stop and yield in the St. Maria subdivision. We had this at the last meeting. Any questions?
We have final reading.
An ordinance amending section 27-89 of the general ordinances of the City of Rolla, Missouri, known as the Code of City of Rolla, Missouri pertaining to stop intersections.
Move proposed ordinance pass.
Second.
Roll call vote.
Reuter,
Yes.
Jordan,
Yes.
Schneider,
Yes.
Allen,
Yes.
Henry,
Yes.
Crow,
Yes.
Mush,
Yes.
Roder,
Yes.
Schott,
Yes.
Eberly,
Yes.
unanimous. Tenace.
Ordinance passes. Two items under new business. First is an ordinance amending Chapter 6, Article 3, Section 6-17 of the code relating to building permit fees. Steve?
Yes, council may remember a couple weeks ago, I presented some, as a discussion, how we go about figuring our permit fees, and I presented an alternative method, which makes it easier and to understand with the contractors and just general public alone. And then we also talked about our recapture rate for the department being, actually below 30% this year with our permit fees. So council had discussed going back and maybe present an ordinance to try to regain 50% for the recapture rate. So before you use the ordinance, basically lining out a new method to do the permit fees and to change that from 40% to 50% recapture rate for the department. And I'll be glad to answer any questions. Yes.
Have you heard from any developers, any contractors?
Not one.
Any feedback at all?
Not one.
Okay.
And the multiplier, how many years are we gonna move it to up to 50%? Will that be immediately, or?
Well, what we on this ordinance, it's based on, it's a 20% increase in our fees,
Okay.
so that we only recaptured right around 30% this year, so I figured in the 20%
Okay.
fee, a raise on the fees. That way, hopefully, we'll get to our 50% this year. We won't know until next year to see how the year does.
And
It's just
I-
based on this last year's numbers.
Yeah, I might just add that the budget included it at 50% to fact, and including the fire department.
That's correct.
Expense percentage.
Yeah. I keep forgetting to tell you that. That was in the budget.
Are there any other questions for Steve? That I'd like to open the public hearing. Oh, never mind.
You can do one, but you don't have to.
Pretty quiet.
No one knows about it.
Unopened.
If I could have first reading.
An ordinance amending Chapter 6, Article 3, Section 6-17, subsection 109.2, relating to the building regulations and adoption of the revised permit fee schedule of the Code of City of Rolla, Missouri.
Second item of new business we have tonight is a discussion on the moratorium during the Schuman-Bearwan area neighborhood plan preparation. Tom?
Yes, as you may recall, there was some discussion last time, had a rezoning proposed, and the rezoning happened to be located in this area that's in the Schuman-Bearwan area where I'm starting to work on a neighborhood plan. Just to remind you, this is the map showing the vicinity that we're referring to. So the discussion surrounded perhaps while we're doing this planning process, which will take between 5 and 7 months, hopefully, perhaps there might be a need to put the brake on any type of development or figure out what types of development to allow for that process to take place and hopefully allow for whatever does develop in the area to meet the guidelines and wishes of the plan when it gets done. So the benefits to doing a moratorium, and that moratorium can take many different forms. You'll see at the end what would be suggested if a moratorium is want to move forward with that. But what it can do, like I said, it can sort of ease the process because we aren't worrying about what's going on in the neighborhood while we're working on what changes may be happening in the neighborhood while we're working on this plan. It would allow for any decisions that are made between when the moratorium takes place and when the plan gets done to allow for those decisions to be concurrent with the recommendations of the plan. It would help to prevent some things that may happen that could be contrary to some recommendations that would be in the plan. However, I think there are some negatives that need to be thought about before going down this road. If there are persons who are trying to invest in the area, this could delay their project by, as I said, 5 to 7 months. That delay could result in desire to invest elsewhere in the city if they have that option. Something that I'm particularly worried about would be kind of a negative association with the plan. This is, when I'm going to do these neighborhood plans, I want it to be a positive experience. I want people to say, I want you to come and do this to my neighborhood next when we get done with this. We've got a moratorium where people are affected and can't do something with their property for a period of time. They may end up saying, no, don't come to my neighborhood with this. And also, while we're working on this plan, I think it would create a sense of urgency to hurry and get it done, which could cause rash decisions to be made. So with that, I think you can tell that I'm not particularly in favor of it. So I would say that it's not needed at this time. The level of development that's happening right now isn't, granted I had a rash of things that happened in the neighborhood all at once, but they were all pretty small type of cases. If we had a whole bunch of big apartment projects or something like that come along that could have major impacts, I would say yes, we need to do this. And so that's what I would say is if something big comes up, then we may need to talk about it again. But if we do want to go and do this, I would suggest that it only be for rezoning applications because the area is already zoned multifamily and two-family, so it's pretty well set up already as far as zoning goes for what you'd expect to happen in that area. So if somebody comes in for a rezoning to change from that, perhaps that needs to wait until the plan is done. And also for multifamily type developments. I struggled to say what size of multifamily, but it's hard to put a number on it, so I just said multifamily. But if somebody came in with a big apartment complex, taking up a block or something like that, I could see that as being something that may want to wait until we decide what we want to do in this area. And then just wanted to point out that if to go down the road, there is a little bit of time to allow for people who already have things in the work to hurry up and get it in. Basically, if this is just a discussion tonight, if you did decide to move forward, we'd bring something back next time. There'd be first and second readings, so upwards of 2 months from now, so people would have to get something turned in if they really had something in the works, though. Do you have any questions for me before we move into discussion?
David?
Yes.
I just have a quick one. I think everything you mentioned, and especially some of the downsides, like in terms of the negative public opinion of doing a neighborhood plan, as well as some of the negative effects for if you have a parcel you're looking to do forward, I think all that makes sense. And I think also the idea that if a plan came through for a new rezoning that we could relook at it also makes sense if something like that were to happen.
And I'll also say anytime you have a rezoning application, you can always put off defer deciding on it.
Sure.
So if you did have one that came along without a moratorium, you could decide to table it for a period of time.
So the only question I had was, I wasn't really sure what's on the table for the neighborhood plan in terms of what might be decided, but I'm thinking in my head of a scenario where something's already zoned R3, and maybe developer's going to a meeting and seeing that the community's like, would maybe, let's say, want to put a height restriction instead of being, what R3 currently allows. We'd want to say, hey, let's take it from 3 or 4 stories down to 2 for certain zones or something like that. My question and kind of concern is if someone noticed community residents worried about that, had come to some of the meetings, had seen maybe the direction that the majority of folks wanted to go, they might take their R3 and quickly try to develop it to a 4-story building or something. I'm just trying to think, is there any, now that, because it's not a rezoning, we wouldn't get a look at it. A moratorium would stop something like that, but it would also stop a lot of other small projects like you mentioned. Is there anything you can think of that would accommodate a scenario like that, that maybe the community is looking to make some changes that then a developer's like, hey, I'm going to quick get in there and do maybe exactly what they don't want quickly so I can have it done before this process is finished?
The only thing I can say on that is nothing's stopping them from doing that right now.
That's true.
If the market dictated the need for 4-story buildings, for example, I would think they'd be interested in doing that right now already. And then if, I don't know, those are just thoughts.
Okay. I think it all makes sense. I mean, I'm not trying to, I also think the moratorium doesn't necessarily make sense, but I'm just thinking of what potential could come up. And the reason I use that example is I know a lot of residents in the area are potentially concerned sometimes about like single family next to like giant warehouse looking buildings of residential, or which is one of the things I think the folks there are going to want to address. So I'm just curious if something like that were to come up, but I guess we just.
And something like that even could, well, it's not great for the person who it happens next to.
Right.
But like I said, nothing stops things like that from happening. Part of the reason for that is there isn't any, or hardly any, design requirements in the code right now. And so if something happened that caused people to notice what the negative impacts of not having these requirements in the code are, that can get people behind you when you go to do that. Whereas if you don't have something to point to say, here's what we want to prevent, sometimes, especially when it comes to design requirements, sometimes that's a tough sell. So I'd almost, it's not always a bad thing if when bad things happen.
And isn't this neighborhood composed mainly of very small lots? So if somebody wanted to do a very large construction, they would have to probably come to us for re-subdivision and that, whatever that, would they not?
Not necessarily. If they built all across, if they bought 4 lots and they met the minimum lot size and they built all across the lots with a building.
Okay, so they don't have to come and make that one lot in order to do that?
Not if they build across it.
Okay.
A lot of builders do, but then there's not a requirement they can build multifamily.
I mean, because we've seen several of those
Yeah,
come through.
just consolidating lots.
Okay.
That seems to be more of the pattern today, but it's not a requirement to do.
Okay.
Right.
Tom, you mentioned design plans. There's no design planning in our code. Is that something that you're doing with this community plan?
We'll see what the people want. That's something I'm prepared a survey to ask people some pointed questions, and so that's some of the questions I intend to ask to see. Let's say, for example, do you want, say, a front porch on a building? You want to have windows that face the street. You want to have the door that faces the street, so you don't have kind of just a blank wall facing the street. Those types of things to help kind of make buildings tie into the neighborhood a little better.
Are there models that you look to?
A lot of places do have some of that stuff. I haven't pulled any out to this point. I'm sort of familiar with a lot of this because I've been arguing about these types of things for many years.
Okay.
We did adopt some design standards, at least on our attached single family, which look like, the existing ones look like one big building, and now we require a little bit of offsetting. And so we did tweak ours a couple of years ago, but there's more that we would like to do, and I think engaging the neighborhood will get a better feel for that.
There's some really good examples of design codes at Pella, Iowa.
Pella, Iowa.
If you've ever been to Pella, Iowa, if you go to their downtown, all of their buildings are very similarly done in a Dutch fashion. It looks amazing. their homes all look amazing. You have to keep your yard up. You have to, you should look into it.
It is pretty common for cities to have at least some minimal requirements in the downtown. Require, like, for example, no metal siding and things like that, at least in the downtown.
And right now
for residential areas, it's fairly not super common.
Right now, we have nothing, other than
what he
Mr.
brought
Bud
up. Yeah,
suggested.
that's right.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
I just want to say thanks again for doing this. I really think that community and that neighborhood is a great place to start, and I know of people I've talked to over there that would like to see this discussion start for a long time. So I'm really glad you're doing it. And the last little piece I just want to say is, I know I mentioned it before, but I think sometimes what I've noticed is that the height differences, like where you allow like a really high story building next to some single family, seems sometimes out of place, and that's one of the things, like, I guess we'll see what the residents say about. But for me, certainly I've noticed that sometimes that creates kind of a odd feel, especially for the folks that are still living next to a larger building like that. So I don't know if depending on what the community says, if that's something that can also be integrated into, like, maybe an R3A, R3B, or something like that. But looking forward to seeing what the process turns out. Thanks again.
All right.
Thank you, Tom. Moving on to claims and/or fiscal transactions. First, we have a motion awarding bid for purchase of a street sweeper. Darren?
So the street department is proposing to purchase a new street sweeper from Armor Equipment in Arnold, Missouri. It's proposing to use a cooperative bid purchase with the state of Missouri. It is a plane replacement in the street department. I would like to point out that there's a typo. The trade-in should have been $65,000, not 40. If you'll flip to your quotation page, it does say $65,000. So staff recommends the option of trading in, and we also recommend awarding the bid to Armor Equipment for $166,833.
No, it should be 65,000.
So there should be 20.
No, that's right.
Yeah, that's $166,000, right?
It's red. Okay.
Do we have any questions for Darren? Darren, I look at the price of this $231,833. That just seems like an awful lot of money to sweep a street. I mean, what is the benefit of a street sweeper besides picking up leaves?
Street sweepers run every day.
I know.
I mean, outside of freezing temperatures, it is run every day. I mean, that's what keeps our storm sewers from plugging up. In the fall, of course, I mean, it is really tough to keep up with all the leaves. But, I mean, the rest of the time, I mean, if there's an accident, there's glass, I mean, it goes sweeps that up. I mean, it's on a rotation, sweeps every street in Rolla.
So it's not just for making the streets look pretty. It's
No, it is for maintenance. That's the only thing that keeps our storm sewers from getting plugged up with gravel and debris.
Okay.
How many do we have?
One.
Really?
Would it be any value in keeping the old one and running two?
We considered that based on, I mean, the one we owned before this, we kept for 10 years. And when we looked at maintenance records, about year 7 is when it started getting expensive to maintain. So, I mean, that's why we decided on a 7-year replacement schedule for it. So my recommendation would be no.
It's hard. It's hard to see that expenditure, given where we're going to be. We're going to the voters in November, and it just. I know it's a necessary expenditure, but it's, you know, the optics is tough. You know, like Matthew said, it's a street sweeper, so it's.
It's not the most glamorous piece of equipment.
I trust that you guys know what you're doing and that you know what you need.
It is an invaluable piece of equipment.
And that the city very likely needs to spend that kind of money on that. But I look at $166,000 and I think of the radios for the police department, you know, so.
Darren, what budget does this come out of?
The street capital
improvement
fund.
budget.
Okay.
Yeah, so it doesn't compete directly with the general fund's public safety
Right.
needs, but
I mean, this is definitely not a Cadillac unit. I mean, we try to, I mean, For example, when the state buys them, they get all stainless steel beds, and it's another $30,000-$40,000. We've had good luck not going stainless steel. We try to purchase it just as cheap as we can.
And it's about the cost of a trash truck, quite frankly. You've got a fleet of trash trucks.
Dump trucks right in that range.
Right.
Any further questions? Is there a motion awarding the bid?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Motion awarding the bid passes. Next item we have is a motion awarding bid for Project 500 fiscal year 2020 Phase 1 asphalt improvements.
So we opened bids for 2020 Phase 1 asphalt improvements. We received 3 bids. Pierce Asphalt was red low. This will overlay 6th Street from Salem Avenue to 18th Street, Holloway Street from Salem Avenue to 18th Street, 6th Street from the railroad tracks to Kings Highway, and Kings Highway from the 6th Street intersection almost to Route 63. So we recommend awarding the bid to Pierce Asphalt. They were the low bid, and we also recommend a first reading ordinance authorizing the mayor to enter a contract with Pierce Asphalt for $131,860.60.
Any questions for Darren?
Darren, when is this work going to start taking place?
We were hoping to get it done this fall. Depending on the weather, I don't know that's going to happen. The completion date is, I believe, May of next year.
Okay.
More than likely in the spring. Because the 6th Street portion's got to be done at night.
Yeah.
So.
Is there a motion to award the bid?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed?
First reading.
And can we have first reading of the ordinance?
An ordinance authorizing the mayor of the city of Rolla, Missouri to execute on behalf of the city of Rolla, Missouri a certain agreement between the city of Rolla, Missouri and Pierce Asphalt LLC for fiscal year 2020 Phase 1 Asphalt Improvements Project 500.
Next fiscal transaction we have is a motion approving sold surplus assets through Gov Deals October 1, 2018 through September 30, 2019. John?
Yeah, we submit this every year or so. Council authorizes the sale of items over $500. We often do that when we're buying a piece of equipment or replacement vehicle, and we'll say we're going to sell on Gov Deals, and then we compile those over the course of the year and report back to them. So these items have all been sold, so the obvious question was, why would you ask us to approve that now? But it's good to have this on a record, because we'll then eliminate those assets from our asset listing, and the accountants like to make sure that that's been properly processed. So we do want to report back that Gov Deals has been a really effective way for us to sell equipment. We get much higher value here than the traditional way of selling. We also use a couple of other small programs. There's one called Purple Wave. There's another one that we're looking at, possibly doing a little bit of the same thing on a little bit more specialized equipment that we have. But by and large, Gov Deals has worked pretty well for us. So what we'd like is a motion to just approve the last 12 months' worth of surplus items.
Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Motion is approved. Mayor, City Council comments. There are 2 comments from the mayor. One is a motion reappointing Miss Linda Hill to the Rolla Housing Authority. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion is approved. Second is a motion appointing Mr. Jonathan Hines to the Police Personnel Board to complete the unexpired term of Miss Fran Mazanek.
So moved. Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion is approved. Are there any council comments? David?
I have one. This statement I'd like to just read based on the loss of one of our council persons this past week. We've all been saddened by the loss of our councilperson, Jimmy Dale Williams. In honor of his 29 years of service to our community, I feel it is important to recognize some of the things that Jimmy Dale stood for and how we can embody his example as we move forward as a community. In my time serving on this body with Jimmy Dale, there were often times that my perspective was in opposition to a view that he held. While we would often have a rigorous debate about the issue at hand, I came to respect his willingness to share a smile and a handshake after such a meeting. and continue to keep the dialogue open in a positive manner. Debate and sometimes friction are an important part of making sure that all sides of an issue are explored before making a decision. But the ability to stay lighthearted and realize at the end of the day that we all want the best for our community was truly understood by Jimmy Dale. There were also often many times when an issue would receive overwhelming support from the majority of council. But Jimmy Dale had no problem voicing his opposition and voting against an ordinance or resolution when he felt so inclined. He wasn't concerned with falling into line with the majority opinion, and he always stood on what he thought was the right thing to do for his ward and community, even when he was the lone dissenting voice. Opposing voices can help our local government and democracy grow and ensure that all perspectives are heard and represented. And of course, we will all remember Jimmy Dale when the spring comes and the grass begins to grow. The reminder to Rolla citizens to get out there and mow your grass was not an insignificant one. He recognized that cleaning up our yards or picking up trash when we come across it is all part of the vision to make our community a beautiful and inviting place for residents and visitors alike.
Right.
Thank you, Jimmy Dale, for your lifetime of dedicated service to our community, to our city, county, and community. May we all continue to remember the ways in which you made Rolla a stronger and more enjoyable place to live.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other council comments? Is there anyone from the community that would like to speak about S&T? Any news from there? No? Okay. Comments for the good of the order?
Yeah. I guess actually one thing I might say, Dave and I were just at the engagement week ceremonies there at S&T. S&T, like the rest of the university system, is sort of doing a week of sort of events and activities to sort of celebrate the connections between the university and the community. And sort of, there was a nice little speech today about the desire to sort of grow that connection that we're seeing from the chancellor and some of the people over there. And it was very nice. He said hello, recognized us council members there, and even noted the absence of our mayor. So.
I would just piggyback on that. I also had a chance to talk to the chancellor, and he is very interested in engaging and seeing if we can find ways that the city and the university can strengthen our already strong partnership. But any ways that, if any of us have, that we want to approach him, I think he's very open to any ideas that we may have to work together. So.
Yeah. Good. Any other comments for the good of the order? We have one item in closed session, real estate. Is there a motion to go into closed session?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call vote?
Henry,
Yes.
Allen,
Yes.
Schneider,
Yes.
Reuter,
Yes.
Muse,
Yes.
Jordan,
Yes.
Everly,
Yes.
Roeder,
Yes.
Schott,
Yes.
Crow,
Yes.
10 ayes.